In the last episode, you got to hear from keynote speaker and mindfulness expert Pandit Dasa, and we've brought him back to speak about mindful leadership. Listen in as Pandit shares some great examples of strong leaders and how they create a positive, mindful workplace culture.
So what does mindful leadership really mean, right? It means how are we showing up for our organization and for our employees? A leader isn't just meant to be showing up and being extremely productive. That's very important. But also, how are we showing up mentally and emotionally? Right? Are we encouraging everyone to engage in work-life balance? Or are we not? And are we encouraging others, but we're not doing it ourselves? So one of the key aspects of mindful leadership is to lead by example. Not just in terms of how productive we are, but also how we're showing up in terms of our physical, mental, and emotional health. There's actually two examples that I like in terms of mindful leadership. One is Gandhi and one is Martin Luther King Jr. They both did the difficult tasks. They both led the marches for freedom. They just didn't let other people do the difficult tasks and sit behind a desk. There's a great example of one leader who was very accessible, very down to earth, and very humble, and extremely successful. He is one of the former CEOs of Japan Airlines. Now, what was unique and interesting about him is that he was very down to earth. He would take public transportation to work. He would ride the bus into work. He's a CEO of a major airline. And he wouldn't sit in his office. He would sit in an open space with all of his colleagues. So his colleagues felt comfortable coming up to him, talking to him, sharing ideas, whatever it was. And whenever it was time for lunch, he would get his own lunch in the company cafeteria. And you could see him walking into airplanes and talking to the flight attendants. He was just available and accessible and very easy to talk to. And it's explained that one time when the company wasn't doing so well and he had to give pay cuts to a lot of his employees, he gave himself a pay cut as well. As a leader, showing that, hey, we're sharing the rewards and we also share the sacrifices. Another great example of mindful leadership is Carla Overbeck. She was the team captain for the US soccer team that won the 1996 gold and the 1999 World Cup. She was a team captain, but she wasn't the highest scorer on the team. But what she did was something unique. When they would travel, she would carry the bags of her teammates to their hotels, to the car. She wanted to show that even though I'm your team captain, I'm actually serving you. So she demonstrated what it means to be a servant leader. So I think one important thing we can ask ourselves is, as a leader, what am I doing to serve the folks that I'm leading? How accessible am I? How comfortable are they approaching me to talk to me about concerns or problems or opinions that they have? Am I in the mood of servant leadership or not? And if not, what can I do more of to become that servant leader? Another important aspect of having a healthy and positive workplace culture is making sure that on a regular basis, we are appreciating the contributions of our colleagues, our direct reports, and our peers. That is very important. I think we can all remember a time when we put our heart and soul into some project, and at the end of it, no one thanked us, no one appreciated us, and that is so incredibly deflating. It's demotivating, it's discouraging, it's uninspiring, and there's no way that we'll want to put that much effort into the next project. And that's the kind of culture that creates this whole phenomenon of quiet quitting, where people are doing the bare minimum, where they could be doing so much more. A big reason is they're not appreciated, they're not valued. There's an interesting research done by Wharton Business School. When they were doing their fundraising calls, they decided to divide up the fundraising team into two. The first team made calls like they normally would. The second team received a call of appreciating the work that they're about to do from their supervisor. The second team that received that call made 50% more fundraising calls than the first group, simply because they were appreciated. A massive component of mindful leadership is communicating mindfully. What does that mean, right? We've all been at the receiving end of negative communication at some point or another, and we know how it feels. 4 things to think of when we think of mindful communication. One is, know what you're saying. Make sure your message is clear, right? Think about how you're going to say that message. What's your body language going to be like? What's your tone going to be like? And if it's an email, what's the tone of that email? Is it going to be misunderstood by the other person? Another powerful way of practicing empathy is when we're listening to someone else speak, when they're trying to communicate a message or a point or a concern, really listening to understand and not to respond. So when someone is speaking and you're starting to come up with a response, press pause in your mind. Just stop your mind from coming up with that response and fully give your full mind, full attention to that individual. And when they feel understood and they feel heard, they'll most likely give you the same level of respect, and that is what's called healthy and mindful communication. So mindfulness is not limited to sitting and meditating. Right? We can definitely sit and meditate, and as I've mentioned before, mindfulness can be practiced in a secular way through a variety of breathing and focusing exercises. Mindfulness, mindful leadership, and workplace culture all go hand in hand. And whether we are leaders or not, these are practices that we can implement into our life at any given situation. And all of these practices can also translate into our personal life. Communicating better with our family and friends, appreciating our family and friends. Those who are closest to us are the ones that we neglect the most often. Unfortunately, we take them for granted. So I want to thank you all very much, and I really hope that you're able to implement some of these simple practices of mindfulness into your workplace culture, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.